Smoke curled into her eyes as she stood bound to the stake. The crowd hurled words as sharp as the spears she once faced in battle. She had fought for her homeland. She had fought for her king, and for that she was abandoned. Now the crackle of fire rose around her, each flame licking her skin, marking the final chapter of her life. This is the epic tale of Joan of Arc. It was a sunny day, the kind that should have promised peace. Far out at sea, the glint of sunlight caught on hundreds, no, thousands of sails. The waves groaned under the burden of a great fleet, each mast crowned with white banners slashed in red, a bold cross blazing at their heart. The flag of England had come. Rumors, whispered in shadowed corners, spoke of betrayal. They said the King of France's own brother, the Duke of Burgundy, had struck a secret pact with England, his aim nothing less than the throne of France itself. English lords and soldiers poured into France, their boots grinding its soil into mud. Behind them trailed fire and smoke, and the cries of women and children. The land of the king lay desecrated. To those not blinded by loyalty, his fall was certain, long before he ever wore the crown. But little did they know, their hope lay in a girl, far from the courts and battlefields. Deep in the countryside lived Joan, born under a star around 1412, a mere farmer's daughter, helping her mother in the house and her brothers in the fields. One summer day, there was no one in sight. Oddly, the air shimmered like a lantern glowing in the night. Her thoughts wrestled in silent debate when whispers filled her mind. A cold fear crept into her heart, but it vanished when she realized the voice was from heaven. When she opened her heart and words flowed into her mind, she smiled, a smile just like the one she wore when she received her first gift as a child. Soon the shimmering lights faded away. Her tears stained her face as the soft angelic voice slipped from her mind. It was the first time she had experienced this, at 13. For 4 more years the voices visited her, yet she never uttered a word to anyone. In her heart, only this voice mattered. But sometimes the voices spoke of France, making her falter in tears. Yet soon these words hardened her will, and she was ready to fight for France. The city of Orleans was very important to France, but a plague of English soldiers had surrounded it, bombarding the walls with their heavy cannons. Soon their fury would fall on the city, and they planned to take it by force. The people knelt, trembling as if their bodies might collapse. Meanwhile, the voices spoke to Joan. God has chosen you to save the King of France. She believed these voices were from heaven, and so she believed her body was like armor. With God on her side, who could stand against her? No one. Yet she needed an army. But to get one, she had to speak with the king. She threw on a red dress and walked away from home, without saying a word to anyone about her plan. With slow, elegant steps, she reached the nearest town and asked to see the captain of the garrison. She told him she was chosen by God and needed an escort to the King of France.
He laughed at her as if a jester were standing before him. She left, then returned again and again, until finally he agreed. 4 strong, sturdy knights soon stood at her side. Her hair was now cut short, as if she were a man, and her dress was replaced with more masculine attire. As she departed, everyone in town watched her go, as if a whisper passed through the crowd. Your hero is leaving to save you all. Her legend spread like wildfire, carried on the breath of every tavern tale and market whisper, until it reached the ears of the king himself. The wise ruler, ever cautious, decided to test her. Setting aside his gilded robes, he dressed in the plain garb of a peasant and hid among his courtiers. It was the hour when the orange light of the setting sun faded to dusk, casting the great hall in a glow both regal and foreboding. Joan entered, her boots echoing against the marble floor. The air was heavy with the gaze of nobles, their eyes sharp, their whispers sharper. Yet she moved with the unwavering focus of an eagle in flight. Without hesitation, she walked past the decoy throne and knelt before the true king. A silence swept over the court like a sudden wind. In private, she told him of the voices she had heard, the divine command that had guided her steps. The king, no fool, listened intently. France was drowning in war, and only a miracle could raise it to the surface again. His heart believed, yet his mind wavered. A peasant girl, here to save France? What if her power did not come from God, but from darker forces? What if she was a witch? He was lost in his thoughts, but time was precious. Joan trained fiercely, learning to wield the lance and master the gallop of a war horse. Soon, the order for battle was given. Throughout Orleans, whispers rippled through the people. A warrior sent by God was coming, one blessed with visions and unshakable courage. They said she could see the future, that saints descended from heaven to speak with her. They said she would bring food, soldiers, and victory. That night, Joan rode in through the narrow back iron gate. The streets glowed with the warm, flickering light of torches. Voices rose in jubilant shouts, and the people pressed forward, reaching to touch her as though a fragment of heaven had descended among them. Suddenly, a torch's flame leapt too close, and her flag caught fire. With swift precision, Joan wheeled her horse, smothering the blaze in a single fluid motion. Gasps turned to awe. The crowd now certain that not only was she chosen by God, but that no fire on earth could harm her. When dusk broke, and the sun climbed high over the horizon, Joan stood atop the city gate. Across the river, the army of English soldiers stretched into the distance, their banners blurring in the haze. Fear did not find a home in her heart, for she knew death was not yet ready for her. Victory awaited. Yet she pitied the enemy. Lifting her voice, she called out, offering them mercy. If they surrendered, their lives would be spared. The English replied with mocking jeers, as if she were prey. "Be careful we don't catch you, or we'll burn you." Rage ignited within her. She turned on her heel, storming back into the city. Making her way to the priest, she spoke in a voice both solemn and sure. "Stay close to me, and bear witness. Tomorrow, blood shall run down my chest." The next morning, Joan charged the enemy. Every soldier in the city, every boy strong enough to lift a sword or hurl a stone, stood ready to die for their country. Soon after the fighting began, an arrow soared through the air and struck her in the chest. Blood flowed down her armor, and a wave of searing pain washed over her body. Someone rushed forward, offering her a healing charm, but she refused. Instead, she hardened her resolve, tore off her armor, and pressed forward into the fray. The battle raged until the sun grew weary, sinking low behind a haze of smoke and blood. The captain's heart faltered. He feared his men could fight no longer, their bodies battered, their arms trembling from the weight of steel. Doubt gnawed at him, urging him to sound the trumpet of retreat, to pull them back before they collapsed. But Joan's eyes burned with a fire the setting sun could not match. Joan begged him, just a little longer. Before he could answer, she wheeled her horse and rode alone into a desolate vineyard, its twisted vines clutching at the evening air. There, in the shadow of the dying sun, she dismounted, knelt, and prayed. Moments later, she returned at a gallop, fire rekindled in her eyes. Seizing her standard, she leapt on to the parapet of the trench, the banner snapping in the wind. The French erupted in thunderous cheers at the sight of her, while the eyes of the English glimmered only with terror. In desperation, several hundred men surged onto the bridge, trying to flee. But the press of bodies and the fury of the assault doomed them. Nearly all were cut down or swept away. Joan's voice rang out above the chaos, commanding the English commander Placidus to bow before the King of Heaven. The power in her words struck him like a blow. Staggering, he lost his footing and plunged into the river below. Joan wept, her heart heavy with pity for the fallen. Of all those lost, she pitied Placidus the most. The victorious French returned triumphantly to Orleans. Their joyful victory carried on the ringing bells. Joan retired to her lodging, where a surgeon tended her wounds, gently cleansing them with olive oil and lard. The next morning, the English approached, as if ready to begin another battle. But Joan came out to meet them accompanied by brave soldiers and determined citizens. For an hour, their eyes locked, each side staring into the soul of the other, yet no one made a move.
At last, the English silently withdrew, marching away along the riverbank. Then Joan rode back into the city. The people thanked God and praised him, for he had chosen a pure maid to drive out the king's enemies. The siege of Orleans was over. But now, Joan had to take the king to Reims to be crowned, and that part of the country was still held by the enemy. She rode ahead to clear the way. Her armor shone like silver, and she carried a small axe. A mighty host of captains and soldiers followed her, for now everyone wanted to fight with Joan for France and the king. The English feared Joan, calling her a witch. But the people of France saw a holy maiden, her presence surrounded by white butterflies. She was majestic, a sign from God who had sent her into battle. When the people of Reims saw the king approaching, they poured into the streets to welcome him. The next day, the king was crowned in the cathedral with great splendor. But when Joan knelt before him, her eyes filled with tears. She could not forget the many brave men who had died for her gentle prince. Joan's work was done. She could have gone home and escaped her fate, but the captains begged her to stay and conquer the battlefield. Later, news came that the town of Compiègne was surrounded. The people were ready to die rather than surrender. Joan could not bear to see her people suffer, but she was warned. If she went, she might be taken prisoner. She led a small army to Compiègne, making their way around the enemy camp by night. By day, they slipped quietly into the town. As soon as they crossed the bridge behind them, it was closed. Upon entering, Joan was recognized by her flag and dragged off her horse by a rough soldier. Just like in a puzzle, Joan was trapped in a tower surrounded by dense forests. But it was not the cold stones that harmed her. It was the sorrowful cries of the people she knew were doomed to fall. Deep inside, she understood she would sacrifice herself for the king. Yet why was he silent now? What awaited her? The truth would bring Joan immense pain. The king had made a secret deal with his cousin and England, and Joan was a key piece in this cruel bargain. Stricken with grief, Joan knelt before prayer before leaping from the tower.
She was caught immediately, dragged back, and severely bruised that she could not eat for 2 whole days. During this brutal time, Saint Michael and his angels appeared to her, their radiant beauty filling the dark cell with light and hope. When they dissipated back to heaven, Joan wept, yearning deeply to follow them home. At last, Joan was taken to Rouen for her trial. Now in English hands, she faced those who wished to destroy her. To the ordinary people, Joan was a heroine, a saint, but to her enemies, she was a threat. A special court was assembled to accuse her of heresy, claiming she pretended to hear heavenly voices, to speak with saints, and even to see them. The punishment for heresy was death. Cauchon, the wicked bishop of Beauvais, awaited Joan. He had been paid by the English to ensure the trial went against her. He believed he could easily confuse the simple country girl, but he was wrong. Joan was unafraid. She warned him, "You say you are my judge. Consider well what you do, for truly I am sent from God, and you place yourself in great danger." Now Joan was imprisoned at Rouen Castle, cruelly chained to her bed. She was questioned for hours on end, but she answered so fearlessly that no one could trap her in a lie. Still, her fate was sealed. She was condemned as a heretic, sentenced to death by burning. The voices comforted her. "Take all in good part. Do not complain over thy martyrdom. By it thou shalt come at last to the kingdom of paradise." The English carried out the sentence, but at the last moment, an Englishman made her a small wooden cross, which she kissed and hid inside her clothes. She died by fire, and her ashes were cast into the river on May 30th, 1431.